Hello there, loyal viewers of WhatCulture.com. Adam Cleary here, and it is time, finally, for us to talk about the Snyder Cut. Basically, right, it's really funny to me how the narrative of things can shift so much over time. Like when Batman vs Superman first came out, it was such a disaster and it was so bad that it forced Warner Brothers to rethink their entire approach to comic book films, and that was all Zack Snyder's fault, apparently. It's not hard to understand why that happened, because Snyder himself has always talked about how much he hates doing normal comic book movies, especially when he was making Watchmen, and then he's got this habit of tearing up traditional tropes in these kind of films, and you can even go all the way back to the point where he said he didn't like Superman. But then something strange happened, didn't it? Because for all the criticism that film was getting, he completely redeemed himself by releasing a director's cut of it that wasn't just an improvement on the theatrical version, but way better than what we got in cinemas. And everyone was like, oh, maybe he actually does know what he's doing. And Warner Brothers then decided to put even more restrictive shackles on him for his next project. The problem is, and if you don't believe me, ask Tim Burton, Zack Snyder's vision for Batman, and indeed Superman, was just too dark for Warner Brothers. They wanted their own version of the MCU, which was just this relentless merchandise machine that people of all ages would go and see the films of, but Snyder wanted to make a dark movie, which is precisely what happened to Tim Burton. He got booted off Batman Forever, despite how good Batman Returns was. Basically, what you've got is a director with a creative vision and a studio that wants to make loads and loads of money, and these two things very rarely mesh. So when the film, the first one, Batman vs Superman, was a critical disaster that didn't make anywhere near as much money as they wanted it to, they were like, this idiot, he needs told what to do by us. First, they decided in their infinite wisdom to have him make a load of changes to his first cut. And then, when he provided that, they looked at it and said, no, do you know what? That's unwatchable. We hate it. And then in the midst of an unspeakable family tragedy for Zack Snyder, they just replaced him with Joss Whedon from the MCU. So with a very dark and now completely messy film in one hand and a director who was famed for making these light-hearted, brisk, very tight films in the other, they just put them together and said, can you just fix this for us, please? Can you make this like the ones you normally make at that other studio? And, well, lo and behold, the entire output was a complete disaster. It was big, it was messy, it was all over the place in terms of tone, and everybody hated it, pretty much. So where did that leave us all? Well, we had a pretty terrible film, to be honest, but also we had this sense of injustice over what had happened to the director, not least of all because of his family tragedy, but also because of his recut of Batman vs Superman. We now knew he was capable of delivering these things, capable of delivering a clear creative vision. So, as you might expect, fans took up the cause to fix this problem. And this is where the term the Snyder Cut, and thus the hashtag release the Snyder Cut, was born. But the question we really need to ask ourselves, and I will be doing over the next 7 or 8 minutes of your life, I don't actually have a watch on, is would that have been any better than what we got? What did we actually not get that first time that we might get now? And will it be good? Let's examine. Now, before we get to all the really good stuff, I just want to address what I think is a slight misconception from people who are outside this bubble. People look in at Zack Snyder's fans and they think, you know what, you only like his movies because he is subversive, he refuses to bow down to comic book tropes, because he's everything Marvel isn't. And that's not strictly true. Like, he doesn't throw source material out the window, he doesn't all over the law. This would still have been a comic book movie. Subversion of law is not betrayal of law. But the problem with his subversion is that he took a film that was primarily looking like it was going to be about Superman versus Batman, because they are the two most famous superheroes in the world, and he pushed them right down the pecking order of importance in this movie. He'd already killed Superman off. There was apparently talk that he was going to kill Batman off in a future film, according to some leaked reports. So Warner Brothers looked at this and they went, whoa, they absolutely shit themselves. And you can kind of understand why, to an extent. Like, the entire MCU has been built around the backs of Captain America and Iron Man, and it took them 10 years to get to a point where they could conceivably even think about killing them off. And they haven't killed Captain America off, he's just old and can do cameos and can do films in the past, and they haven't even technically killed Iron Man off because he's going to be in the Black Widow movie. Like, you cannot bin in the minds of these men your bankable characters this early. And so, with a new director in the chair and all these changes imposed upon the film, The Flash, Aquaman and Cyborg were relegated to, well, not cameo appearances, but very, very, very much supporting roles. And part of the reason we know this is because of the amount of digitally removed mustache we got on Henry Cavill, which means we must have shot so many new scenes with him in to kind of pad out his importance. And the reason for this is because Whedon took that film and he wanted to make Superman the beating heart of it, whereas Snyder has said for him, Cyborg should have been the beating heart of it. In Snyder's cut, we would have seen Cyborg's origin story, including that football match sequence that's been widely teased, and the inclusion of Victor Stone's mother, Eleanor, who would have been killed in a car crash caused by her own son when the question of his father's presence in his life finally came up. He would have then been revived with a mother box as per the scene in Batman vs Superman, and it would have been him who discovered and revealed the most about the mother boxes to the rest of the league throughout the film. There would have been loads more about him as a person and lots of scenes of him discovering and starting to use his powers. Crucially though, Victor would have been key to the importance of the nightmare scene, which would have come to him as a vision of what would happen if the Unity wasn't stopped. Which would of course then made that long-rumoured cameo appearance by Darkseid actually possible. That would have tied into the relevance of that sequence from Dawn of Justice, which of course just ended up meaning nothing at all come Justice League. The events around Superman's resurrection were also played with far too much. There's a bit that explains why he didn't just become Doomsday himself, but that was binned off entirely as his importance as a character rose, and then Whedon apparently decided to give him dialogue after he was resurrected, which Snyder did not want to do. There was also, and there's just little things all over the place, right? There was a scene that would have explained why the Genesis Chamber was so deserted, which allowed them to do their little plan. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, the film isn't better for having that scene in it, but it's just another little narrative bridge, which makes two other things make a bit more sense. And we got none of that. Then, of course, there is Iris West, or as she's known in the comics, Iris West Allen. Yes, she's that important. She was going to get saved by the Flash in a big scene. That got cut, and there was all this other stuff about the Flash as a person and the Flash as a hero, which got binned off entirely as they very visibly tried to put the training wheels back on Barry Allen. Like, he just doesn't feel like a rounded hero in this movie, and he was supposed to. The sad thing is, and this is not me just laying into Joss Whedon for the sake of laying into Joss Whedon, I think the guy makes really good movies. He clearly saw Barry Allen as an easy character to do some Marvel-esque comic relief with, and that is a shame. Like, I did a video on this very channel not that long ago talking about scenes that went absolutely nowhere or something, and one of the biggest ones in that is the Flash's appearance in Batman vs Superman. Find us, you were right, etc. They were gonna try and start explaining that in this film, but just didn't bother because that's not a funny thing for him to do. It's character building, and we don't want to build this character. Like, there are loads and loads of other just like small and major cuts throughout the film, hence why they spent so much time redoing it, and they all do little things. They all do little things for characters here and there. There's loads of stuff with Aquaman. Willem Dafoe was supposed to be in it, but the thing is, right, the key about the Snyder Cut, it's not the stuff that was taken out, it's the stuff that was added, and there is some really janky stuff that was added. Basically, right, all that Marvel humor that I actually quite like in the Marvel movies, but don't like in films that are trying to be dark, that's what Whedon put in. He put in all the funnies, he put in all the light stuff, he put in all the tone changing, haha, aren't we all just a bunch of super lads out for a super time, look out, woohoo! That's what he did. Plus there's other stuff as well, like Wonder Woman had a much smaller role in this, but her part was beefed up following the success of Patty Jenkins' movie. Like, there was also no Russian family that they needed to save in the final scene, which, if you think about how Marvel movies always go down, that is classic Whedon. See, for all the talk at the time that Whedon's changes and his additions and his cuts were going to be minimal, and that was the official line from Warner Brothers, we've realised over the last 2 years that straight up simply is not true. He did loads and loads with it. Like, Snyder's version was going to be far darker, far grittier, far more concerned with the mythology behind these stories, far more concerned with setting up interesting future premises, and instead, Whedon came in and he tried to make it this, like, Marvel-fed, like, comic book, just classic cheesy adaptation. Now, I'm not saying either one of those is bad. Like, I like gritty superhero movies, and I really like the Marvel style of making films, but you can't just, like, smash them both together when that one's already mostly made and expect to come out with something coherent, and hence it wasn't coherent. It was a complete mess, both tonally and narratively and in terms of its characters, everything. And this is the crucial thing for me. This is the whole reason I wanted to do this video. Like, if I was Zack Snyder, right now, everyone thinks you're a genius because you said you had a brilliant version of this film and then it came out and it was absolutely dreadful, so it makes you look like you were the genius all along and the studio was full of a bunch of ass pricks. So, why risk that? Because if it comes out and it's anything less than amazing, it's kind of a disappointment. Right now, that legend can build, your stock can rise. All it would take is like a fairly average movie coming out of this for people to be like, oh, after all that, after 2 years of release the Snyder Cut, that's it. But, and this is the crucial point about all of this, Zack Snyder firmly believes in his vision every single time he makes a movie. For better or worse, he fully believes that if he's got an idea, it's worth seeing through, and thus, he will almost certainly want to release this at some point if he physically can. And if he can, hell, catch me in the front of that queue to see it. And do you know what it is? I think we actually will see it. It's the 2-year anniversary of this movie coming up. Ben Affleck has tweeted his support. Gal Gadot has tweeted her support. There could not be a bigger groundswell of emotion for this to actually happen. And Warner Brothers must realize they've binned everything off by now. It does not matter what happens in this film. If it contradicts the first one or it breaks the narrative or it breaks the law, it doesn't matter. It'll just make you loads and loads of money. And why the hell else do you release director's cuts and thingy versions and change it all years and years down the line? Look how rich George Lucas is, for Christ's sake. He brings out a new version of every film he's ever done every couple of years, whether it makes sense or not. And the thing is, I saw somebody say the other day that Warner Brothers will never release this movie because if it's as good as we think it's all going to be, then they look like idiots. Listen, I'm telling you, right? Doesn't matter how bad Warner Brothers look in all of this, they're still going to have more money than God. They can still make whatever movies they want. It will not impact them in the slightest. They'll just make loads and loads of money from having released a good film. And as my close personal friend Simon Gallagher has put in the article, which was the basis for this video, there is a glimmer of hope that this will finally happen. And what is life without hope anyway? Warner Brothers might release it on HBO Max, or it might get a run in theaters, or you might get it in your stocking some Christmas one year. Who knows? But as ever, I'm far more interested in your opinion. Yes, literally, not saying that to everybody, just you, right there, Paul, your opinion. Let me know in the comments below, and of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. But in the meantime, though, thank you so much for watching. I have, of course, been Adam Cleary, a man who's apparently been on Marvel's payroll for the last 5 years, according to the comments. Bit of a weird video to do, if that was true, isn't it? And I'll see you soon.